back to another video, and today we got our Week 10 college football top 25 rankings. We're doing these videos every single Tuesday night, so make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new. Turn on the noties to make sure you don't miss whenever we upload. Not only do we do college football videos, NFL videos every single Wednesday, we're doing weekly NFL picks. College basketball videos come out every Monday. Now this week, it's a little bit different because we're doing a bunch of college basketball previews, but typically NBA will also be Thursday. Again, not this week. We also do MLB content when that season is up and running. So if any of that interests you, make sure you go down there, hit that subscribe button if you are new. Links in the description, as always, X, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. Make sure you follow those, join those. With all that being said, though, let's just hop straight on into our number 25 ranked team, and it is Army. I wanted to find a reason to move them up. But ultimately, when looking at it, I do believe, it's hard to say Army's better than the teams I would consider, like, putting them ahead. You know, you could argue that some of these unranked teams are better than Army, but we'll give them some respect. They are one of the last undefeated teams in the country. They're sitting at 7-0, and they really have not shown any signs of struggle the whole year. I mean, their closest game is that FAU game week 2, 24-7, where they won by 17. I guess maybe last week against East Carolina, they did win by 17. Now, they are coming off the bye last week, which I think is pretty good because they get a time to regroup, refocus. They're ranked now. Yeah, they were ranked last week, but you get what I'm saying. I think they've actually been ranked for like 3 weeks now. But you get what I'm saying. You know, they get some time to regain their focus. And for this game against Air Force, which Air Force isn't a good team, but I do worry a little bit because it is one of those academy schools, so maybe there's something brewing there. But ultimately, Army's looked really good here. They've shown no signs of struggle. I think Air Force might be able to hang around for like a quarter, but Army is favored by 22.5. I do have Air Force covering, and I think that's fair to say they cover. But ultimately, I think Army gets it done. I mean, their lowest point total this year, besides week 2, is 37 points. So their offense looks legit. I think they win. Now, I do think Air Force maybe keeps it a little bit closer than some of these other teams against Army have been keeping it. But I do think Army wins. Number 24, I have Washington State. Now, I wanted to drop them out because they didn't look very good against San Diego State. They only won by 3 points, and they were losing for the majority of that game, but they did end up winning. So that, I guess, is good. Good teams find a way to win. But you look at the resume, they do have some close wins on there. I mean, very close against Washington. It's not a bad, struggle game. Washington did beat Michigan. They are a Big Ten team. They did blow out Texas Tech, which is a pretty good win. But a struggle game against San Jose State. They kind of got handled by Boise State. A struggle win against Fresno. Struggle win against San Diego State. When looking at the resume at this point, it's not great, but we got to give them some respect. They are 7-1 and looking really, really strong. I do think at this point they deserve to be ranked. Their offense looks pretty solid. They're led by John Matier. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. But last week he had a pretty good week, 257 yards and 2 touchdowns against San Diego State, and they did come back and win that game, which is always a good thing to see. They are on bye this week, so no game prediction for them. But moving on to our number 23 team, this is another team I just feel like at this point they don't deserve to be ranked, but I can't really find teams to put ahead of them. I mean, like, I would love to put Washington State and Army ahead of them, but do I really think Washington State and Army are better than Missouri? Probably not. But I don't know. I mean, look at the resume. Their best win is probably Vanderbilt by 3, which is actually a pretty good-looking win now. Vanderbilt also lost to Texas by 3. Vanderbilt, you could make a case, deserves to be ranked. I don't know what their record is. They're 5-3, maybe something like that. Maybe 4-4. I'm not sure with Vanderbilt, but you could definitely make a case. And they are actually the first team out in the AP poll. Only 3 less votes than Missouri in the AP poll. I do think Missouri at this point is, deserving to be ranked still. But, I mean, in the 2 good teams they have played, they've gotten absolutely killed. They've gotten blown out. They have you look in SEC play, They've only played 4 games in conference. 2 of them are wins by 4 or less points, and then 2 of them, their 2 road games, are points or losses by over 30 points. I mean, Alabama was struggling. They were down in the depths. I thought Missouri might be able to keep this one close, and they just go out and get absolutely handled. I know Brady Cook was out for a lot of this game with this, I think it was a hand injury, which does hurt them quite a bit. But Missouri was a team that people were saying should be a top 10 team, should probably make the playoffs. But now at this point, even if they win out, I don't know if a 10-2 Missouri gets in. I mean, the resume is just not great. If they win out, their best one is, again, probably still Vanderbilt. Uh, I don't know. This Missouri team's not in a great spot with that loss. That was kind of a must-win game for them. So we will ultimately see if they do finish 10-2. There will be a conversation, but I don't know. It's going to depend on what happens around them. They are on bye this week, so that's good. Brady Cook will have the chance to get healthy for them. Number 22, I have Illinois. I'm not going to drop Illinois too much. I did have to drop them 3 spots because they did lose. But you look at this resume, it's still a really good resume. I mean, a win at Nebraska is a really good win. A dominant win over Michigan. I know Michigan's not great, but that still is a tough team to beat. And then 2 road losses to Penn State and Oregon. But those are 2, right now, probably the 2 best teams in the Big Ten. You know, Ohio State's going to have something to say about that this week. We'll get to that game in a little bit. But, you know, I mean, can you really fault them? It's the number 1 team in the country. Oregon's playing great football right now, and it's on the road. Yes, it was a almost 30-point loss, but again, can you really fault them? I don't know. Oregon looks just dominant. I mean, it was 35-3 at halftime, and you kind of knew it was over at that point. Luke Altmaier did all he could, 161 yards, 2 picks, but ultimately Illinois fell a little bit short. I was thinking there's no way Oregon covers, what was it, 23 points. They covered it pretty handily. Um, so yeah, Illinois falls to 6-2, but still, when looking at Illinois, they have a good chance to finish 10-2. I mean, they're better than these 4 teams they have left on the schedule. The hardest game is probably this week against Minnesota. Minnesota is 5-3. Minnesota's actually favored by 3 points, which I think is interesting. Maybe do they know something I don't? I mean, is someone on Illinois? I don't think Altmaier's hurt. Did he get hurt or something? I'm not sure. So we'll see with this game. Who I think's gonna win? I think it. Yeah, I think Minnesota could have a chance. Again, it's really weird. Minnesota's favored here. Illinois is also at home. I'm not really understand. I think Illinois will win. I'll say it's a close game because Minnesota's favored, and Minnesota is a pretty good team. They're 5-3, but I think Illinois wins. I mean, I don't see a reason why Minnesota is favored in this game. Really, Illinois is the better team in my eyes. They get it at home. All signs are pointing Illinois. I'll go ahead and take them. I guess this is an underdog pick at this point. It doesn't seem like it should be, but I guess it is. But I'll take Illinois to win over Minnesota. Number 21, new addition, familiar face here from last year. We had Colorado ranked for a good amount of time last year. Welcome to the top 25. They have not been ranked yet this year. Congrats to Deion Sanders. He's done a great job with their program. Really just complete 180 from last year. Last year they finished, 4-8? This year they've already secured a bowl game spot. And they're looking to keep rolling now. I know this little stretch isn't. These are all pretty. Well, let me rephrase. I was gonna say these are all pretty good teams. These are all teams that in the preseason had some pretty hefty expectations. So they're talented teams. Now, a lot these next 4 teams, or these last 4 teams they have on their schedule, have not performed to the level they would have expected. Texas Tech 5-3, Utah 4-4, Kansas 2-6, Oklahoma State 3-5. These are all teams that I predicted to have 8+ wins coming into preseason. So that just goes to show how little I know. But I mean, when looking at Colorado, they have put on. I mean, they lost at Nebraska, which is a good team, and that's a tough place to play in a rivalry game. Their only loss is a 3-point loss to Kansas State, who is ranked. every other game they've won pretty easily besides the Baylor game, but they did end up winning, I guess, in the week 1 game, but that was week 1. Colorado, they're a team that they got Shedeur Sanders, they got Travis Hunter, they got Jimmy Horn, explosive offense, but not only do they have those playmakers, they've improved a whole lot from last year in the trenches, running the ball wise. Now, I know the offensive line isn't where they would expect, where they'd want it to be because it still struggles, but it is better than last year, which I think is a good sign for the program moving forward. Colorado, believe it or not, has a very real outside chance to get into the college football playoffs because there's a good chance if they win these last 4 games, they get into the Big 12 championship. Now, we will see because BYU and Iowa State are still undefeated. Kansas State still sitting at 1 loss. But there's a chance Colorado gets in there, and they're playing a 60-minute game for a top 4 seed in the college football playoff. That's crazy to think about, but it is a realistic expectation. And Colorado, at least in my eyes, is better than these 4 teams they have left on their schedule. Speaking of the teams they have left on their schedule this week, they are on bye, so they'll get some time to prepare for that at Texas Tech game. Because honestly, either that or the Utah game, in my opinion, is the hardest game left on their schedule. I'd probably lean towards Texas Tech. They have a better record and it's on the road, but Utah is still a very good coach team. So we'll see with Colorado. We'll see how they finish. But honestly, they make a bowl game. I mean, is this already they've already, exceeded my expectations. Actually, maybe not. I might have had them going 6-6 or maybe 5-7. I don't really remember. But they've already made a bowl game. Is this already a successful year for Colorado and Coach Prime? You could make an argument it is. Now, obviously, they got their eyes set on bigger things now, and I think they could do it. Shedeur Sanders, it's either him or Cam Ward, best quarterback in college football, so they're going to have a real chance to do so. Colorado's a very interesting team. Welcome to the top 25, first time this year, but moving on to a team that has been in the top 25 for the past couple weeks. Number 20, we got SMU not moving. They're staying where they're at. They just narrowly beat Duke on the road. I thought this was going to be a close game. I was right. They win in overtime. Scary, scary game. They found a way to win. They moved to 7-1. Good on SMU. And I said these next 2 games for SMU are really going to determine what happens here for their season. And I stand by that. They go into Duke and narrowly escape. Good for them. Duke is a good team. I mean, people don't know this. Duke is 6-2 on the year. I mean, there's an argument for Duke to be ranked. I mean, I wouldn't rank them because they have a lot of close wins. We'll see. Duke plays Miami this week. We'll see if they can make some noise. They did almost beat SMU. They lost by 1 point in overtime after Duke went for the 2-point and didn't get it. Which, they also got a game-winning kick blocked. So Duke had some miscues. They probably should have won that game, but SMU found a way to win. Now, I didn't move them up because of that, because it was a game where they probably should have lost, but I will give them props. They found a way to win. Now, this week, this is a huge, huge game in the ACC. Both these teams undefeated in ACC play. And both these teams looking for a chance to play in the ACC championship. Now, they're going to have to get past teams. They're going to have to overcome Clemson and Miami, which will be tough. But whoever wins this game will be put in a very good chance to win because both these teams don't have very tough schedules moving forward. This is a game where I could go either way. 7-over, 7-1. What it comes down to here, and it's hard because Pitt just blew out a Syracuse team that I had ranked last week. I'm very tough on this. Now, that at Duke game was a trap game. They found a way to win. I think what it comes down to, I think SMU wins, and I'll tell you why. They, unlike Pitt, have played a very good team in BYU. They've also played Louisville on the road and Duke on the road, who are both above 500 teams and solid teams. BYU is a team that is pushing top 10 in my rankings, and they lost by 3. When looking at Pitt, they haven't really had a game where they have faced all that much adversity. I guess you could say the Cal game where they won by two, but I don't know. Does that really count? You could also say the West Virginia game, but that's always going to be close because it's a rivalry. I think SMU has the better resume up to this point. I think that's fair to say. The fact that they get it at home is huge here. I don't think they're favored by 7.5, which is crazy. I don't think they get that much on Pitt, but I will say they win at home. It's going to be a very close game though. Um, yeah, this is going to be one of the games of the week. Huge implications for the ACC. Speaking of Pitt, they're going to be right here at number 19, and yes, I do think they lose. Last week, very impressive win, I will say, and it's hard for me to pick against them based off what they did last week to Syracuse, who I'd ranked. Kyle McCord threw 5 total picks, 3 pick sixes, I believe. Pitt didn't really even have to do anything on offense. Um, yeah, this is going to be a really good game here. Kevin Jennings for SMU takes on Eli Holstein for Pitt, or Holstein maybe. Um, I think I think again this could go either way. I lean towards SMU though. It's at home. It is a very tough game to predict, but I think SMU has faced a little bit more challenges this year, and I think the loss actually helps them in the long run. I think they're more prepared. I think they go out and beat Pitt in a very, very fun, competitive, high-scoring game. Um, 31-27 is my prediction for this one. Number 18, though, Ole Miss, going to stay put where they're at. They beat Oklahoma by 12 points. I mean, it's not an impressive win. Oklahoma's not great. They won at home. I guess you can give them something. They're favored by 7 against Arkansas on the road. I'm going to say they win by about 7. Arkansas could go out and win this game. They're 5-3. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Ole Miss just looks bad. I mean, it's tough because Ole Miss was a team I thought was guaranteed a playoff spot this year. I mean, when looking at their schedule, I found it hard to believe that they would have more than 2 losses at max, and I thought they for sure would be, well, not for sure, but I thought there was a good chance they'd beat LSU and finish 10-2. I mean, they do get Georgia at home, so they're gonna have a chance to flip the script on their season. I mean, Jackson Dart has said it; they need to win out, and he's right. They do. They're not getting in with 3 losses. This is a game though that is a trap game. I could see them losing. I'm gonna say they win because I think the talent, Trey Harris, again Jackson Dart. I think they're much more talented than Arkansas, but I think it's gonna be a close game. I think they struggle in the first half. I wouldn't be surprised if Arkansas's up, I don't know, 14-7 at half, 17-7 at half, 17-10. I could definitely see that. Because I think this is a very, a spot to be a trap game. But I am going to go with Ole Miss. I think the talent just gives them the edge narrowly. Um, but yeah, they're going to have to win out. So I'm going to take them to win, but I think this could potentially be an upset spot here. Number 17, LSU moving down 10 spots after me being very low on LSU. I was calling them overrated. Was kind of waiting for them to lose to have my chance to drop them down. Then they go out and beat Ole Miss, and I'm like, whoa, we were too low on LSU. We got to move them up. And then they go out on the road against an Arkansas team who was 5-2 at the time and blow them out. I'm like, okay, LSU is legit, and there's a good chance they play in the SEC championship. Now it's a little different. Now I'm kind of back to where I started with LSU. They're 6-2, and they're gonna have a game against Alabama that whoever loses this game is knocked out of the playoffs. I mean, there's a really good chance LSU wins. It's a night game in Death Valley. That's always gonna be a very hard game to win, and Alabama's gonna have their work cut out for them. Now they are on bye this week, which I think favors LSU a whole lot. That game's going to be huge next week. For the SEC standings for the college football playoff, because like I said, whoever loses probably doesn't get in. LSU is moving down a whopping 10 spots though after their loss to A&M. I will say LSU was winning 17-7 at half and for a good part of the third quarter. A&M puts in Marcel Reed. He goes just crazy in the second half. Garrett Nussmeier starts turning it over. I mean, A&M got the momentum and they never looked back. They just took the momentum and ran with it. Literally, Marcel Reed rushed for three rushing touchdowns. Nussmeier threw 3 picks. Um, yeah, this was a game LSU probably should have won. They just, like I said, they made some mistakes. They let A&M get back the momentum at home, and they let A&M continue to roll. They couldn't stop them once they got going, and props to A&M for doing that. A&M just turns it on in the second half. 31 points in the second half, crazy. And holding, I mean, they got outscored 31-6 in the second half. That's not what you want to see if you're LSU. Now, they will get a chance to recoup at this bye. I did say these next 2 games for LSU are the most important of their season, and this Alabama game is essentially an elimination game for both these teams sitting at 2 losses in the playoffs. They do get on bye, though, so no prediction here. Number 16, Boise State wins against UNLV at home, or on the road. That was the game I was worried about. I was very worried they were going to go out and drop that game because that game, Friday night, weird game on the road. UNLV was a team that was ranked in the AP poll at one point, and they only had 1 loss going into this game against Boise State. Their only loss to Syracuse. Boise State wins 29-24. Ashton Jeanty didn't really do much, but Boise State found a way to win. Give them their props. They're sitting at 6-1, and they probably there's a really good chance they win out for the rest of the year. I mean, the best team they play is San Jose State. That's 5-3. So, like, Boise State is probably your 12 team or your 12 seed in the college football playoffs, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, they are a very good team, and I'm very intrigued to watch Ashton Jeanty against whoever he gets matched up against in the college football playoff. See how the game plan goes, and he could just absolutely take over a game, and Boise State could win. As crazy as it is to say, because Jeanty is that good. This week against San Diego State, I think they bounce back a little bit. I think they take care of business 38-17 here. Broncos continue to win. Number 15, I have Kansas State. They moved to 7-1. I feel like Kansas State is kind of getting underrated in the AP poll. They've had Kansas State sitting from 18-20 really for like the past couple weeks. I feel like you got to keep working Kansas State up. I mean, they continue to win. It was a rivalry game against Kansas, so I'll give them a little bit of a pass. Kansas is a pretty bad team, though. It probably shouldn't be that close against Kansas. I've been saying this. Kansas State is probably still the team I trust the most in the Big 12, as crazy as it is to stay with Iowa State and BYU playing as good as they are, and both of those teams are undefeated. BYU did beat Kansas State by almost 30 earlier in the season, as you can see. But I don't know. I just, something about Avery Johnson, DJ Giddens, Dylan Edwards, that run game. I mean, they ran for 226 yards, threw for 253 against Kansas. No turnovers. Kansas game to play. We'll give them props. This week against Houston, Kansas State's favored by 13.5. I wouldn't be surprised if they cover. I think they blow them out and continue to win. Kansas State is a team that will have a very real chance come Selection Sunday, and we're going to see what the selection committee thinks about a lot of these Big 12 teams, and really all the teams here next Tuesday. That's going to be very intriguing to watch. Number 14, another team that continues to win. Indiana is going to continue to slowly work their way up the rankings. They go out and beat Washington 31-17. It was a little slow, but I'll say they were without their quarterback Curtis Rourke, and they still won. So good for Indiana. Starting Taven Jackson. He threw a pick. He also threw a touchdown. He did all that they needed him to do, which is very good. Now, this next 3-game stretch, yes, Indiana's better than Michigan State. Yes, Indiana's probably better than Michigan at this point. I will say, though, these are 3 tough games for Indiana. I'm going to be honest, Michigan State, yes, like I said, yes, Indiana's probably better. But Michigan State is one of those teams that's never an easy win, especially on the road. They got some talent over there. This is going to be a tough game. I think Indiana wins. I think Curtis Rourke is going to play. If he's not going to play, I'm unfortunately I could see Indiana losing. Like I said, these next two games are just huge teams in the Big Ten. So we'll see. Indiana's shown no signs for me to doubt them, so I think they'll win. But I do have Michigan State covering. Indiana's favored by 7.5. I have Indiana winning by 7. If Rourke plays, though, I don't really see any worry here. But the Michigan game and on the road against Ohio State, both those games are going to be tough. I know they get Michigan at home, but that's still going to be a very tough game for them. But Indiana, 8-0. We got to give them some respect. Indiana has a real chance. I mean, a real chance to get into the college football playoffs. If they finish 11-1, only loss on the road against Ohio State, if they keep that game somewhat close, there's a chance they get into the Big Ten championship, depending. I mean, probably not if they lose, but there is a small chance with one loss. We'll definitely we'll see with Indiana, but there's a chance they could sneak into the college football playoff as maybe the 11-10 seed. Number 13, Alabama, coming off a very very good win, 34-0 over Missouri. It's hard to shut out an SEC team, especially a team that's ranked. I know Missouri was without Brady Cook for the second half, but still, I mean, this is impressive. This was a defense that I had a lot of question marks about. They showed out in this game, and they looked really good going into this bye where they're going to have a whole week to prepare for this LSU game on the road, and I think they need it. I think both teams need it. They're both going in to their bye this week. Milroe, Ryan Williams, they're going to have to play a great game against LSU. I could see that game being very high scoring. I mean, that's, like I said, that's an elimination game for the playoffs. Whoever loses will not make the playoffs. That's going to be a great game. That's going to be a huge game in Death Valley next week. Night game. What an atmosphere that's going to be. Can't wait for that. But no prediction this week, obviously, with them being on their bye. Number 12, I have BYU. Another undefeated team that's going to continue to move up because they continue to win. They go on the road to UCF and win 37-24. Pretty solid win for them. I think UCF was favored in this game. What a ridiculous line. I called them out. I said, I don't know why UCF's favored. I think they were favored by like 3 points or something. Really weird. I didn't understand it one bit. I picked BYU, and they won pretty easily. They were up 24-10 at half. They were up 34-10 actually at one point in this game. UCF scored a garbage time touchdown to kind of make it look a little bit closer than it was. But I will say with BYU, there's a good chance they get into the playoff. I mean, here's the question. If BYU and Iowa State enter, or even Kansas State, I mean, if BYU and Iowa State enter the Big 12 championship, just for the scenario, they're both undefeated. Does the loser still get in? There's a real chance that that is the case because it's going to be hard to leave out a 12-1 BYU team only lost to Iowa State. It's going to be hard to leave out a 12-1 Iowa State team, especially with both these teams just either, both these teams. BYU is actually ranked 9th in the country in the AP poll. Iowa State tied for 11th right now. It's going to be hard to say that to those teams. We will definitely see this week. BYU is on bye, so no prediction here. I think this is a tough game, though, at Utah. I wouldn't be shocked if they lose, but I think getting the bye here is a huge win for BYU. And you look at their resume. They have a blowout win over Kansas State and a road win against SMU, who is also ranked. BYU's got a pretty good resume. There's a chance they get in if they finish 12-1. BYU's in a really good spot right now. They control their own destiny for sure. Number 11, team I was just talking about, Iowa State, coming off their bye last week. They go into a home game against Texas Tech, who is not an easy win whatsoever. Texas Tech is a physical team. But Iowa State gets it at home, coming out of the bye. I think they're going to be well rested, well prepared. I think they win 34-21. I do have Texas Tech covering because I think Texas Tech is a little bit slept on. I just think they're a good physical team and just a good team in general. I do think Iowa State though wins here by 13 points at home, just not by the 14 and a half that the line says right now. But like I said, Iowa State as another team that controls their own destiny, that they're going to have a little bit of a tougher path because they play home against Texas Tech, not an easy game like I just mentioned. At Utah, again, not an easy game. And then home against Kansas State. That Kansas State game is going to be huge for the Big 12 because likely the winner of that gets into the Big 12 championship, and the loser is probably out of the playoffs. It's going to be very interesting what the committee. We're going to see next week how the committee respects the Big 12 because they have teams Iowa State, BYU, Kansas State. I mean, there's a chance that all three of those teams finish with one loss. And then what do you do? I mean, that's going to be very interesting for the committee to deal with. We will see how they respect the Big 12 here a week from today. Number 10, though, A&M cracks the top 10. I believe for the first time this year. Good on A&M for getting up here. They started off the year with the loss, and they have been rolling the past couple weeks. I mean, they were struggling. I was ready to give up on A&M. I was ready to call it quits after the Florida game, the Bowling Green game, the Arkansas game. The past 3 weeks, they have been rolling. And there's a really, I mean, A&M has a real chance to get into the college football playoffs as well as the SEC championship. They're 5-0. They're sitting at the top of this conference. They're the last undefeated team in SEC play. I know they do have the loss to Notre Dame, but that's not a conference loss. A&M is in a great spot, and that Texas game to finish the year, we were all excited. That's a rivalry coming back, rivalry that we haven't seen in 10 plus years. Now that's a game that likely determines who makes the SEC championship and could determine who ends up getting into the college football playoffs because the loser of that game is probably going to be sitting at 10-2 and probably going to miss the SEC championship game. So what do you do with the loser there? That's going to be an interesting scenario when that plays out. Now that's assuming Texas A&M and Texas win out until that point, which I think is a real possibility. But like I said, they bring in Marcel Reed, bench Connor Weigman, and they just, in the second half, just turn it on against LSU at home. Great showing for them. I mean, it's good to see. They didn't give up. They kept fighting. They kept pushing, and they got it done over LSU, who's a very good team. Now the question is, who plays for the rest of the season? Is it Reed? Is it Weigman? I mean, because I still question how Marcel Reed can throw the ball, and is he going to be good enough to win an SEC championship game throwing the ball wise? I'm not sure, but is Connor Weigman going to be good enough to do it either? I mean, who gives you the best chance to win at this point? It's hard to say. They have a really interesting choice to make. Texas A&M in a very good spot, but they do have QB concerns, which does worry me. I don't want to bring them down because they're on cloud 9 right now. They're real chance to get into the SEC championship game. Even if they lose to Texas, that's only one conference loss. I mean, there's a chance they could still get in even with a loss to Texas. But that right now is a top 10 matchup, so that's going to be a huge game, and they get it at home. Enough looking forward, though. This week they play South Carolina on the road, and this game I feel like could be kind of a hangover game. I think it's going to be close. I think A&M wins just because I think they're much better, but it is on the road against, a road SEC game is never easy. I think they could have somewhat of a hangover game. I do think they win, though. It's hard for me to predict they lose with the way they've been playing. Notre Dame at 9. I will keep them ahead of A&M just because they did beat them on the road. I know that was week 1, but when looking at Notre Dame, I've been saying this for a while. They should probably be 8-0. I mean, the Northern Illinois game was, that was a fluke. I mean, we're being real. If they play that game 10 times, Notre Dame is probably winning 9 at least. I mean, Northern Illinois they got the win. No, not trying to hate, but you look at this Notre Dame team since that game: 66-7, 28-3, 31-24. Louisville's a good team though. 49-7, 31-13, and then 51-14 over a ranked Navy team. Notre Dame's probably going to finish 11-1. That at USC game doesn't look as tough as it was 2-3 weeks ago. Um, Notre Dame probably finishes 11-1. They probably get into the playoff. But like this schedule is just bad. Now they have the win at A&M, which is going to carry them probably into the playoffs. But like this schedule is just not impressive at all. I mean, yeah, they're probably going to win 11 games though, so it's going to be hard to leave them out. Um, but Riley Leonard, great game once again against Navy. Jeremiah Love got going. This team's a good team. I'm not trying to bring him down. It's just like yes, they're gonna probably finish 11-1, but like you look at the schedule. Yes, besides the A&M win, their best win is what? It's gonna be. Is their best win at USC, who has 4 losses? Is their best win Navy? Is their best win Army? Besides the A&M game, is their best win Louisville? I really don't know. They are on bye this week though. No prediction there. Number 8, I have Miami. Uh, this is lower than the AP poll by quite a bit. I was way higher on Miami to start the year. I had the AP poll had Miami ranked what 20th in preseason. I had Miami all the way up at like 10 or 11, maybe 12. And I had them all the way up as high as maybe 4 or 5. I have pumped the brakes on Miami a little bit. They opened up ACC play with 3 struggle wins in a row, but they do take care of business against Florida State, who is pretty bad. I mean, they only have 1 win, but I still respect Florida State. They're still a good program. Um, yes, they've struggled. I'm really intrigued to see what Miami does against this Duke team because this Duke team did uh, just narrowly lose to SMU and they probably should have won. So we'll see how Miami plays here. I feel like that'll be a good telling. I feel like these next 4 games, these final 4 games for Miami, will all be good tellings because if they go out and blow out every team, then yes, they're probably a playoff team. But if they go out and struggle and continue to struggle, I mean, it's hard to say they do that because they have arguably the best quarterback in the country in Cam Ward. But I mean, it's going to be interesting, well, to say the least. Looking at this Duke game, I don't think I mean, it's 21.5 points against a team that just lost by 1 point to SMU in overtime and probably should have won because they got the last second field goal block. They got 2 point conversion fail to finish the game. So I think Duke can cover, but Miami does get it at home. I don't know. We'll see with Miami. They could go very well go out there and blow them out and just quiet me down. But it is. I mean, I don't know. Miami's a bit of a question mark for me. I do think they have a very good chance to make the playoffs. There's a good chance they go 13-0. They will have to most likely play Clemson though in the ACC championship game, and that goes into my next team. Clemson, I do have ranked above Miami. You looking at the eye test, Clemson has looked better in the past recent weeks than Miami, and I feel like you gotta give it to the Clemson, right? I mean, they have not struggled since week 1 um, against Georgia, and Georgia's an elite team, one of the best in the country. You could argue the best. I wouldn't give them that title right now, at least. But when it's all said and done, Georgia could be the national champions. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility. But Clemson is 6-1. They're gonna have a game home against Louisville, where I think will be a good test for them, because we really haven't seen them be, all that tested besides the Georgia game. These next 3 games will be a good showing for them. Home versus Louisville, and then at VTech, and then at Pitt. Those 3 games are not easy games at all. I think Clemson wins, but I do think Louisville can cover the 10.5 point spread. Louisville only lost to Notre Dame by 7. Louisville only lost to Miami by 7. I think they can cover. I do think Clemson wins though at home. I think they are the better team. It is a night game at home there for Clemson, and they are coming off the bye, so I don't think there's any. I mean, there is a small chance, but I don't think there's any real chance Clemson goes out and loses. I mean, you never know with college football. Number 6, Tennessee is going to stay put. They're coming off the bye, coming off the huge win home against Alabama, and putting themselves in a great spot to make the playoffs. Because even if they lose at Georgia, I mean, a 10-2 Tennessee team with a win over Alabama, it's going to be hard to leave them out. And that's assuming they win at Vanderbilt, which will be a good win. Now, that game's not easy. Um, This week against Kentucky coming out of the bye, though, I think they win pretty easily. Nico, I think at this point we got to start, expecting him to play a little bit better. Because even in the Alabama game, he didn't look all that great. And, if he continues to play how he's playing, there's no way they win on the road against Georgia. The defense is elite. I'll give them that. One of the best defenses in the country. I mean, holding Alabama to 17 points, that is very impressive. Georgia's defense gave up 41. I'll point that out to Alabama. But again, Tennessee in a very good spot to make the playoffs. I think they win this week here against Kentucky, no problems. Number 5, I have Texas moving down one after they win on the road against Vanderbilt, but it was a struggle game, and I'm starting to question what do they do with Quinn Ewers. He has these moments where he just looks scared almost. I mean, he started off the game with a pick. He finished the game with 2 total picks. Vanderbilt was up 7-0 early in the game. I will say Vanderbilt looks like a really good team. They are 5-3, but their only losses are to Missouri on the road in double overtime by 3 points. Texas by 3 points, and they do have the Georgia State loss, which hurts them a bit. But they have a home win over Alabama. So, Vanderbilt's looking like a really good team. I mean, will Vanderbilt finish ranked? I don't know, because they also have LSU on the road and Tennessee on their schedule. So there's a good chance Vanderbilt finishes 7-5, but, they are going to be the best 7-5 team we've ever seen. I mean, Vanderbilt's a really good team. I don't want to fault Texas. I do have to move them. I do have to jump Penn State over them. Just because I had Penn State behind them. I had Texas 4 last week, Penn State 5. But it was I'm worried about Quinn Ewers a little bit. I'll say that. They did win though. They found a way to win. So good on them for that. And they were up 24-10 in the second half. They were also up 27-17. Vanderbilt scored a garbage time touchdown, so it was more like a 10-point win. But they did struggle early in the game at least. They'll get a bye this week, which I think helps them a lot. I think they need it at this point. They should win these next 3 games, and that at A&M game we already discussed is going to be a huge game. Number 4, I have Ohio State. We got to talk about them too. They narrowly escaped Nebraska, who, mind you, the week before the last, Nebraska got lost to Indiana 56-7. They go out the next week, go into Ohio Stadium, and lose by 4 points to Ohio State. So by that logic, Indiana's a much better team than Ohio State. Obviously, I'm not saying that. But, I mean, the O-line for Ohio State just looks... It looks bad. They couldn't run the ball against Nebraska, and Indiana ran for 250 yards against Nebraska. That's not a good look when you have Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, 2 top 5 running backs in the country on your team. You also have Donovan Jackson at guard, who's probably a second-round pick at worst in the NFL draft. They lost their left tackle, obviously, which is a huge loss, but, come on. I mean, they couldn't run the ball at all. Very worrisome for Ohio State. It sucks for me because this is my team, so I am starting to worry a little bit, and it's not at a good time that this is happening because they got Penn State this week on the road. Now, you look at this from Penn State's perspective. They just went out to Wisconsin, won a gritty win, tough win. They came out on top. You look at this from Penn State's perspective. First of all, they get it at home. It's going to be a crazy atmosphere. Penn State is arguably the hardest place to play. Besides LSU, I'd probably would say Penn State is the hardest place to play. Again, outside of LSU. Penn State in the trenches at this point looks much better than Ohio State. They have a good O-line. The D-line for Penn State is arguably their strongest point of the team. And we just talked about how bad Ohio State's offensive line looks. The D-line could have a field day there. I mean, I have a hard time believing Ohio State can run the ball. I mean, Nebraska shut them down. They couldn't throw the ball either. I mean, well, they did throw the ball somewhat, but for Ohio State, you got to think like, why not keep throwing the ball? They had a deep play to Carnell Tate. They had a deep play to Jeremiah Smith. Abuka got involved somewhat. I don't understand. They kept trying to run the ball. It wasn't working. I don't see. It doesn't look good for them. I mean, I think there's a very real chance this is the year Penn State beats Ohio State, and that's crazy to say because I mean, yes, this is Penn State's best team in a long time. This was the year for Penn State where I think people expected them to get, make that next step. Um, I mean, Penn State's gonna have a real chance. If they lose this game, they probably still get into the playoffs at 11-1. If they win this game, they are going to be in a prime position. I mean, this is a game. I don't know what to think. Ohio State's favored by 3.5, but like, I mean, when you look at Ohio State, they have been struggling, and they lost another offensive tackle last week against Nebraska. I think this is going to be a defensive, gritty game. I mean, everything's pointing towards Penn State, which kind of makes me feel like Ohio State's going to win because I mean, you look at James Franklin. This has been the team that's holding him back. I mean, then holding their program back. This in Michigan, Penn State has been a team that goes 10-2 every year. They're going to be a top 10 team at the end of when it's all said and done, but they probably will lose to Michigan, and they probably will lose to Ohio State, and that's been the case. James Franklin hasn't shown he can get it done in big games quite yet, which is worrisome for me. Another thing that I want to point out is Penn State's quarterback. Who is going to be in? Is it Drew Aller or because Drew Aller just I don't know, Prabula. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He looked really good last week against Wisconsin, um, because he brings an aspect where he can run the ball, and that's kind of a three-headed beast. If they got him going, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton as well. They also have Tyler Warren, who's probably the best tight end in the country. You look surface level, all the signs are pointing to Penn State. If you look deeper, though, I mean, Ohio State's the more talented team by far. Yes, it's on the road. And yes, both these coaches have struggled in big games before. But Penn State's always had an Ohio State problem. JTT has always been Penn State's problem. I think he could be in for another big game. I mean, they're going to need the defense to turn them over, and I think they can. Drew Aller hasn't done anything too impressive if he is even going to be the starter. I think that's a good sign for Ohio State that they don't even know who their quarterback is. Um, I think their defense is good enough to shut down the run, and without that, I mean, Ohio State's corners have been attacked 2 straight weeks now, but Penn State doesn't have the receivers to do that really. They do have Tyler Warren, which is a problem. I'm gonna be honest. I did have Penn State winning this game for the past when I was making these, when I was updating all these, the rankings. I had Penn State winning in my mind after the Nebraska game. I had Penn State winning after they played Wisconsin. I had Penn State winning all of Sunday. I had Penn State winning all of yesterday. Right before I recorded this, I switched it to Ohio State. You could call me biased. It's just Penn State's always had a problem with Ohio State. Yes, a lot of signs are pointing in Penn State's direction, and they get it at home, which is huge. I'm gonna side with the talent though, and the history. But again, Penn State, this is the year. If they're gonna do it, it's got to be this year, because they are in a prime position to do so, and that's going to take us to our number 3 team, Penn State, moving up 2 spots. And yes, I do think they lose, just because I mean the quarterback does worry me. I mean, honestly, I think the other guy, Bo Pribula, I think he probably gives them a better chance to win just because of his rushing ability. And Ohio State runs a lot of man, so he could get loose. But I have a feeling they're going to go back to Aller, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. He's probably the better passer. But I mean, in big games, he's shown some faults. He's shown a lot of turnovers. This is a very tough game to predict because both these teams. I mean, Penn State is a team that I've been saying is overrated. Now I have them at 3 though. But I mean, they beat UCLA by 16. They beat USC by 3, who I believe is 4-4 now. They beat Wisconsin by 15, which I'll give them a pass there. That was a trap game. Wisconsin's not a bad team, but like they have that Bowling Green struggle in. Penn State really hasn't played anyone up to this point. That's another thing I like for Ohio State. They lost to Oregon. They've played the best team in the country up to this point. And I feel like you gotta give. I mean, you look at this. Ohio State went into Oregon and lost by 1 point. So it's either Ohio State and Oregon are both way worse than we thought, and that was just a close game against two pretty good teams but not elite teams, or Oregon's still really good and Ohio State's also still really good. Because let's not forget Ohio State, if they get that slide down with a second earlier, or if that offensive pass interference isn't called, they beat Oregon on the road, and we're looking at this completely differently. Maybe the Nebraska game was a trap game for Ohio State. I don't really know. I'm going with Ohio State, but again, I'm not surprised if Penn State wins, which does pain me to say. Number 2, I have Georgia. No surprise here. They come off their bye after going into Texas and winning by 2+ scores. This week, I think they have no trouble here against Florida. I think they continue to roll. They got at Ole Miss and home against Tennessee, though, upcoming. So those are two pretty crucial games, and they're going to need to win. I don't think. I mean, they can't lose both of them. I don't. I think they'll probably win both of them. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Um, I mean, at Ole, yeah, they probably win both of them, but like, there's a slight chance at Ole Miss gives them problems. There's a slight chance Tennessee gives them problems. But this week against Florida, I think Carson Beck has another great game. I think they win, especially coming out of the bye. And Oregon, man, they just continue to get better. Every single week they get better. I mean, since week 1, they haven't had a game with less than 30 points offensively. Besides Boise State and Ohio State, which are two top 15 teams in the AP poll, I believe, they haven't allowed more than 14 points to any team. They haven't had a struggle game besides early in the year with Idaho. But that was week 1. I mean, we're past that at this point. They just went out and beat Illinois, who was ranked, by 29 points. This week against Michigan, yes, it's in the big house, which could give them a little bit of problems. But I think they win. I think there's a good chance they put up 30-plus points again. And Michigan just looks abysmal right now. Like I said, Oregon continues to get better. Oregon is, in my mind, the clear number 1 right now. I think there's a little bit of separation, as crazy as it is to say, with them and Georgia. Oregon, number 1 team in the country, and they probably finished this regular season 12-0, heading into Lucas Oil Stadium for the Big Ten championship. Yeah, Oregon's in a great spot. Oregon's, at this point, a lock, probably, to get into the college football playoffs. I mean, technically not, because yes, they could lose out, but like that's just not gonna happen. They're gonna win out. Their floor at this point, in my mind, realistic floor, 12-1. I mean, I just don't see a loss on the schedule. I mean, their only loss is, if they even lose, their only loss is in the Big Ten championship against like a Penn State and Ohio State. Um, yeah, Oregon's the number 1 team pretty easily here for me. But that's gonna do it for the Week 10 college football top 25 rankings. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you go down there, leave a like. I apologize for the long videos, but there's a whole lot to talk about for college football, and I just enjoy talking about it. So if you like to listen, make sure you go down there, subscribe, turn on the noties. Not only do we have college football every Tuesday, but we do similar things where we just kind of talk about NFL. We predict every game every Wednesday night. College basketball, will starting up our Power 40 rankings every Monday. That'll be beginning next Monday. And then throughout this week, we'll have our conference previews. We already posted the ACC yesterday. Big East, Big 12, Big 10, SEC all coming here within the next week before the start of the season on Monday. NBA videos typically Thursday. Again, not this week, but most weeks it'll be Thursday. any of that interests you, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you check out the videos popping up at the screen now if they haven't already. And yeah, links in the description as always. X, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. Make sure you follow those, join those. With all that being said, though, that's gonna do it. I will see you guys tomorrow with our Week 9 NFL game predictions. Hope you guys enjoyed.